Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MI for Change. Today's a very exciting episode because I have here Hillary Logan, who is going to be speaking with us about how to soften sustain talk. And a little bit about Hillary. Well, first, Hillary, thank you so much for being here with me.
My pleasure.
So, Hillary is an LCSW and an MAC. I don't know if it's MAC. She's a Mint certified trainer and the founder of MI Center for Change, where she provides dynamic motivational interviewing training from beginner to advanced levels. She's a member of Mint since 2011. Hillary has over 20 years of experience as a therapist, educator, and addiction specialist. She created the MI Academy and MI Certificate of Advanced Practice and is passionate about helping people master the art of genuine, compassionate communication. And Hillary was my coach. She coached me through the entire Mint process, and I'm very grateful for that. And I know she's very knowledgeable. So again, thank you so much for coming to this.
Thank you for what you do as well.
Great. So, Hillary, let's talk a little bit about for those out there that don't really understand motivational interviewing, or perhaps have some questions about motivational interviewing, and more so the topic of sustained talk. How would you define sustained talk? I guess in an objective way and in a way where we can all understand.
Yeah, I like to call sustain talk stuck talk because that's a more relatable term. Sustain talk, technically means talk that is sustaining the status quo. So, like the not change yet side of things. And so, if we're talking about ambivalence, the two sides to the change coin, we've got to change or not to change. Change talk is language arguing in favor of change, the reasons for change. And sustain talk or stuck talk is the arguments against it or the arguments for just sort of staying where we're at. And sustain talk can be protective. It can be the not yet ready talk. It's really normal to have it, but I essentially like to call it stuck talk.
I love that. I'm gonna totally steal that. Stuck talk.
You're
I
welcome
really
to it.
and what do you think Sustain Talk is trying to tell us about a client's current state of mind or needs? I know that in a lot of my talks, I've spoken about the trans-theoretical model, which is borrowed into motivational interviewing at times, and that sometimes clients are like ready to go. Other times you're like, wait, what? This is not really like a challenging behavior I'm having. So again, what do you think Sustain Talk is really telling us about the client?
Sustain talk, stuck talk is telling us not yet ready. It's sort of like the little whispering of not yet ready. And when we are thinking about what a change target is, I said the phrase to change or not to change, right? Like that is the question. We can borrow that from Shakespeare. Well, to be or not to be. But to change or not to change is going to be around a specific target, whether to comply with a rule or not, or start a new behavior or stop a old one or something. There's something that we have to know what it is in order to listen for the change of sustained sides of that ambivalence. And so the sustain talk is related to a particular behavior or change target. It's not just a person who's in sustain or stuck, right? It's around something specific. And I think in general, sustain talk or stuck talk is protective.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I think that's a good reflection. And I sometimes I see it as like an invitation to communicate, right? Like we shouldn't just run away from sustained talk. We should just have a conversation about it. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's under that surface, what's keeping it stuck.
Yeah, and I love that because you're relaying curiosity, which is what we want to embody, non-judgmental curiosity. Like, I'm curious about that. Tell me about that side of things. And by being curious about the sustain, we can normalize it. Change is hard. We are also relaying that non-judgmental, and we are we're helping that person feel a little less stuck just
Yeah,
by acknowledging.
absolutely. And I think that a lot of the times from the therapists that I provide oversight with and I supervise, they come with this mind frame of, oh, Now I'm going to interact with this parent for the parent coaching session, or with this client who is going to give me so much sustained talk. They don't call it that, but they're just saying that, so much resistance. And I think that when they come in with that, it's not going to work. I always tell them, sit for a minute and rewire your brain and come in with, I'm going to come in with curiosity. I want to learn what's under that resistance, or what's under, that sustained talk. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, because it's there for a reason.
Hmm.
That sustained talk or stuckness is there for a reason, some reason that is valid and true and real for that person. And so rather than judge it, we can get curious about it. And I really, what I hear you say in your coaching with providers is to remember to be hopeful about our clients. And if we're coming into a session already writing them off as resistant or stuck, or they're not ready yet, or if we want to pre-contemplative about a change or something like that, then where is the hope that we are going to be able to help that person impact change in that conversation or in that treatment? And we know from change research that us as providers having hope in and for our clients impacts outcomes. I was just reading something that was just very simply said: principals that believe students will graduate have more students graduate than principals who believe their students won't graduate, right? What we believe can impact the outcomes.
Gosh, and that's so powerful. And when we work with kids, for example, we have that hope. That's what maintains us there. We have that hope that they will start speaking, or that their behaviors will improve. And, it's always interesting why we sometimes don't have the same hope when now we're working with the parents. But what you're saying is that we should also keep that hope in our relationship with the parent.
Absolutely. Our belief in the ability of those parents to change is a key piece to the success of that child. We have a lot of reasons why it's important for us to enter conversations with parents with a hopeful attitude, with a non-judgmental acknowledgement of sustained talk or stuck talk, and a curiosity also for what change talk might be present there.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about softening sustained talk. So, what does that actually mean or sound like in practice?
Sometimes I imagine, and maybe it's a younger audience than I am, like those old school sound things where I would have like the treble and the bass as well as the volume. There's like knobs that you can adjust the different elements of the sound. But I think that's what we're doing as providers, is we're thinking about what we're paying more attention to and what we're paying less attention to. And overall, as motivational interviewers, we are trying to guide our focus and our utilization of OR skills in the direction of change talk. So we're paying less attention to the sustained talk, which means kind of softening it. It might be like, "Ooh, I want less trouble here. I like the bass," right? Like, so you're kind of picking, like, I am going to cultivate and turn up the change talk, pay more attention to it, evoke more of it, and I'm going to soften and turn down the sustain. And how do we do that? We do that, one of the ways is by paying less attention to it and responding less to it. So a little bit of I had a training participant call it benign neglect. I was
Mm,
like, "Oh, fascinating," right? We're kind of just trying to neglect it. Now, if a participant, if a parent or a client is having a lot of sustained talk and we're neglecting it, we're not responding that much to it, they're going to amp it up
mhm.
to make sure we hear it, right?
Mhm.
So there is a degree to which we are going to have to fine tune and pay attention to our responses in the moment and respond and reflect to it enough so that they get that you get them, so that
Mhm.
there's a true resonance of empathy there and understanding, but not so much time spent hanging out in the sustained talk that we accidentally strengthen or grow it.
That's really interesting because me being like a true behavior analyst, at heart, I'm thinking about a procedure we have, which is called differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. So what
Yes.
we do is that we don't pay attention to the child's maladaptive behaviors. We encourage or pay attention to the adaptive or the replacement ones, right? And then sometimes this maladaptive behavior, because we're not giving it attention anymore, it's going to increase. And we call that an extinction burst. So that is exactly what you just described.
Yes, exactly. It is. And motivational interviewing is very behavioral. We are we are guiding conversation by paying special attention and attunement to particular types of language around those two sides of ambivalence. So the softening sustained talk is in an effort to sort of extinguish, right? But we often have to give enough attention to it so that they feel heard and understood. But then we want to direct in that other direction. And we really do know this stuff works. The behavioral interventions you're talking, they work when we do them consistently, and they work as motivational interviewers. And so that's kind of a nice thing, even for like your therapist learners to think about, is like, oh, I know I coach parents in this, and that's my job also, is to pay attention to language. And so back to that kind of hopeless or focused on, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a bunch of sustained talk from this parent, is like, well, it's normal that we are going to hear that and pay attention to that and focus on that, because it's like problem language. Just like as parents, it's normal that we're going to focus on and pay attention to our kids' problem behaviors. But it's actually our job to train ourselves away from that. And that is true of us as motivational interviewing as well. We are training our brains away from the problem sustained focus and more toward the hope and change focus.
Yeah, which I think it seems unnatural at first for some of us because we're in the profession of that of hearing, the sustained talk and trying to find a solution for it, and this is what we went to school for, and this is what we have all this knowledge for. So I'm sure that at first it is something that is a bit difficult for us to do.
It is, to kind of drop that expertise need to kind of enter a conversation thinking my job is to assess the problem so I can come up with a solution for you. Instead, my job is to help you assess what it is you want to change around, why that's important to you, and how you're going to go about doing that.
Right. And it's based more on values, on what are their values for changing rather than our values for them changing. What
Exactly.
reflective or empathic responses have you found most effective when sustained talk arises?
I mean, it's similar to what we've been talking about around how do I give enough attention to it and reflect it without hanging out there and amplifying it and kind of growing it. Um, Sometimes I think in metaphors, and a metaphor that comes to mind for this is the ocean. So imagine standing at the beach, and you watch before a wave comes and crashes towards you. You watch it pull out. Like you watch the wave collect the power of that water by pulling out before it comes forward and as a wave and crashes towards you. And I think of the sustained direction as like letting it pull out, letting the sustain, like you kind of got to go with it for a little while until there's a readiness for it to curl back around into that change direction. And we don't know how much of that kind of pulling out or sustained direction there is going to be before the the water turns towards that change direction. So we stay curious about that. Like, can I reflect a little bit? Um, the other kind of tool motivational interviewing gives us is double-sided reflections, where we are providing a reflective statement that has the sustained talk and then the change talk. So we're acknowledging, and it's a and, it's not a but, it's both and. Yes, this is stuck for you, right? Sustain. And also, we bring back the change talk piece that is present or that we're guessing at in order to kind of like guide that wave, so to speak, in that change direction and see if that works.
Yeah, I love that. And I always, when I speak with my students, I always tell them, start with a sustained talk argument when you're using double-sided reflections and end with that argument towards the change,
Mhm.
right? Can you give us an example of perhaps a situation with a client or when you are doing your coaching sessions where you have used like softening sustained talk and you did see a shift happen?
I think this happens so often. There's not a particular example that comes to mind, I think kind of the strategies that I think of when there's a lot of sustained talk happening is reflecting and normalizing it, looking for opportunities to bring in change talk. Sometimes even like a coming alongside strategy where we reflect the sustained talk in a compassionate, non judgmental way that supports their autonomy and choice, but just sort of really amplifies it. Like perhaps this is not important to you right now, or perhaps this is not something that you are ready to tackle at this time, where we side with the sustain. But again, you can hear I'm not saying that in a sarcastic way, and I'm
Mhm.
delivering it with
Tone is
compassion.
everything.
Right. Tone is everything. And also the context of the relationship in that moment, and what you're reading in the room and the nonverbals, et cetera. But, to really let something like that sit and so that someone can say, you're right. Either right now, we can empower them to choose not to make the change right now with full transparency and awareness, or they say, I can't keep putting this off. Right. Or they respond with some change talk, which we then can kind of harness and go.
Okay. Okay, good, good. And I know that when we were doing our coaching sessions together, one of the things that was very difficult for me was to just let the reflections sit. So
Mhm.
I followed up all my reflections with questions. And then when I was doing this whole mint thing, they counted as open ended questions instead of reflections. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why is that so difficult? And I remember you saying something. I think it was about like, I guess just socially, women are kind of like driven to ask more of that question. Can you explain a little bit more about that? I think you can say it in better terms.
Sure. I think some of it can be gender, some of it can be culture. Just what I can speak for myself as a woman that has been taught maybe to not be too bold or make assumptions, right? To make a reflective statement, but to have my inflection go up at the end to turn it into a guess instead of a true reflection. Like you're struggling with maintaining boundaries with your son right now. That's a reflection, but you're struggling with maintaining boundaries with your son right now turns it into a question. And those land differently on the speaker or recipient.
Yeah. So, what can others do in order to, I guess, learn how to make the reflective statements and just allow them to sit there? What has helped you?
That's a good question. And some of it is working with our own discomfort as providers, because we as providers might be thinking, I'm supposed to know what to say next. I need to have a piece of wisdom or expertise to drop in here. I'm responsible for controlling this conversation or, getting some particular outcome. So whatever is coming up for you as a provider that you're wrestling with, that's making you want to jump in there before you let there be that pause, and to let the client respond to the reflection that you just gave. Um, some of the things that I help learners do is increase comfort with pauses and silence. Find ways to tame your fixing response, your advice monster, right? Take those moments even to offer in some collaboration or partnership. Like, what do you think? Like, ask the parent, like, what do you think is most important next? Honoring the expertise of that individual. But a lot of it for me has been my own regulation skills as a provider that's going to help kind of tame that need to fill it in. I heard a learning participant use the term, the acronym WAIT. Have you heard that one? Why am I talking? Why am I talking? That's the WAIT acronym.
I love
So
that. Why am I talking?
when you feel that impulse to fill in the space or say something, to pause for just a moment and ask yourself, why would I say something right now? What's the purpose of that? How is that going to be helpful? Can I perhaps challenge myself to take 2 deep breaths before and allow the other person to respond? You know,
Yeah, yeah. And I Do you think that sometimes it's more about the practitioner themselves? I think that's what I heard you say. It's more about their like own perhaps insecurity or their own feeling awkward in the silence that, makes them project that into the other person.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces I think that as providers cause us to say or do certain things, feeling like we need to be the expert in other people's lives and, give advice. But really, there's a lot of invitation as motivational interviewers for us to release that need to know and release that need to be an expert, to honor that. And if we're talking to a parent, to acknowledge there's two experts in the room. I have expertise, they have expertise. They know their kid and their household and their life and their family way better than I ever will. They know what's worked and doesn't work. They have ideas, values, motivations, drives. I don't know what those are. So together, we can explore this.
Yeah.
I
What
don't have
would
to
you
hold that burden
Yeah.
solely.
I think I should practice some of that weight now. I was like so ready to like say something. Um My I think my question, my personal question to you is because I see how that can be difficult for perhaps like we have new people that become supervisors that become like higher therapists, I guess. And since they're young and they start working with parents and it is a little intimidating, they say that it's difficult for them to not want to be that expert and not try to be that expert because their fear is that the parent will just think, well, you have no idea how to help me with my child. So, what do you
Mhm.
respond to that with?
There's such a fine line there, right? Because we are needing to develop some positive engagement and trust and rapport. And when I first started working as an intensive in-home provider, it was way before I had kids myself, right? When and so I got a lot of that, like, and I also felt that need. I need sort of insecurity as like, oh, since I don't have kids, I need to know all the charts and skills and ways like to tell the parent what to do. But the good news is, like what I just said, hey, the parent has expertise. I have some. Like, I'm going to trust and lean into believing that, like, together we'll figure that out. And that also, when I need consultation and supervision, I will get that too. Um, yeah. So I think two things there is one is it's a mindset shift as a provider, being like, okay, I actually don't have to carry the burden or responsibility of needing to know and act like the expert. And in fact, it can be empowering to the parent and build good engagement to acknowledge their expertise. And then the other is using reflections that um, that help parents feel heard and seen there. Like if a parent asks me a question, well, do you have kids? Right? Kind of a challenge maybe around, like, I would say, what do you think the parent is asking in that moment? Do you have kids? The parent's probably asking, can I trust you? Are you going to
Mhm.
be able to help me? Like, so we think about what's beneath a statement like that, and we can provide a reflection and response. You're not sure yet if I'm going to be able to help you as someone who has not had the parenting experience. And as soon as a parent hears that kind of more complex reflection level, more trust and engagement is built there. So instead of saying, you can trust me by me coming in with all these bells and whistles to tell you what to do, you can trust that I can connect with you and listen to you. And through that vehicle of like relational listening and empathy, I am going to be able to help you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that through that and based on what you're saying, that builds a closer connection with parents, and parents are more likely to listen to you and see you as that expert if you are able to build that trust. Because we've known a lot of people in our lives, a lot of perhaps like medical doctors, they may have high expertise or whatever it is, but like the way they're communicating with us is just not landing it. We're just not building that trust, and we don't want to work with them. Doesn't matter how
Mhm.
great they are.
Right, exactly. That's my Angela quote. That's, I'm not going to get exactly right, but people may not learn, they may not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
So if a parent, they feel the difference in energy of like, I feel insecure as a provider and I'm defensive and I feel like I need to come and spew expertise at you versus that felt sense of like, I'm here with humility and curiosity to connect with you empathetically and believe that together we will figure this out.
And I think that that actually takes more maturity and expertise to come in that way. Um, it really does. One question that I always get, just going back to the silence piece, because I think a lot of us are very, um, where we feel awkward in the silence. So sometimes I'm asked, well, when do we know when the silence becomes an awkward silence, or when do we know what to do next? So how do you respond to that?
There's a lot. There's a lot of it depends there, because I'm
Yeah.
not in the room in that moment.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm often asking myself as a provider, am I helping move in a helpful or not so helpful direction? And so, as the silence feel like it's helpful in the moment, it's giving the parent a chance to think. Um, Something potent just happened and we're letting it soak in. Um, what is the purpose of the silence? Is it in a helpful direction? Um, or does it start to get awkward and I see the parent getting dysregulated and fidgety, and waiting for me to take over control or something, or respond, in which case that would be going in an unhelpful direction and I would want to, break the silence. But in motivational interviewing, we can also provide reflections of silence, right? A person could not be speaking and we could provide a reflection like, that's causing you to think a bit more, or that landed for you, or even if it's seeming awkward, it's like it's kind of hard to think about or you're not sure what to say, right? We kind of can fill in the guesses with a reflection.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but going back to the softening sustained talk, which is what we started with here, and I motivational interviewing, it does provide you with these core communication skills that you can use to build rapport, to engage with a client, and then this other piece to it of like softening sustained talk is more of a technical piece, or is it more of like you need more techniques to get to that point, right? What are your thoughts about?
Yes. Right. Motivational interviewing is both relational and technical. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about MI where people may think it's just relational. It's like, yeah, yeah, I can do MI because it's or skills, those micro skills, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Or they think they do MI because they're person-centered in their approach. Um, and and it is both of those things and more. That's where we are layering on this technical aspect where in alignment with the behaviorism pieces as we are paying particular attention to type of language with an intention to grow change talk, because we know the more people talk about change, the more likely they are to change. That is just solidified across change research. So we know that. So we're taking that research piece and knowing what I pay attention to grows. I want to be cautious not to pay too much attention to the sustained talk because I don't accidentally, by staying problem focused and stuck focused, I don't accidentally want to grow that and accidentally cause more stuckness by staying in that focus.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I oftentimes tell the participants where I do consultations, I tell them if you're getting a lot of sustained talk during a session, you have to self-reflect and say, maybe I'm asking the wrong open-ended questions because I am evoking a lot of this sustained talk versus the change talk. So when you're in a session and you're getting a lot of sustained talk and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I get myself out of this? Do you have like a trick or like something that you do to kind of get out of that?
Absolutely. I like that initial thinking that you have there of if I'm getting a lot of sustained talk, let me get curious about what I'm doing that might be contributing to that. Like that's where we start with as motivational interviewers, not labeling the client for being a tough client or difficult change, pre-contemplate all the things that we can call or label that are not helpful to the process. I like to use the 4 tasks of motivational interviewing as an assessment when I'm hearing a lot of sustained talk, when I'm getting either a lot of sustained talk or discord in the relationship. But focused on the sustain talk piece is those 4 tasks, right? Engagement, focusing, evoking, and planning. If I'm getting a lot of sustain talk, I can ask, how is my engagement with this client or family? Do I feel like it's like good, solid engagement? The rapport is there. I'm demonstrating good empathy. We're collaborative. Like we're on the same page. Because if we're working with a client that we don't have good engagement with, they are likely to give us more sustain talk because they don't feel like we're getting them and there's something there. So I might ask, do I need to re engage or engage better with this family? The second assessment question around the 4 tasks is, am I focused on the right thing? Are we focused in talking about the thing that this parent wants to talk about or is ready for? Is maybe the focus that I think we're talking about too big or broad? And we need to break it down to something that's more palatable to focus on changing. Because we may get sustained talk because we're talking about something that's too overwhelming or too big or not the right focus that they're wanting to change. So it's just revisiting and checking on like what it is you're wanting to focus and change on or breaking it down into something smaller. Because I
Yeah.
like to use those 4 tasks as an assessment. Like, why is there sustained talk happening? Why is there maybe discord happening? And then the evoking task is, in that evoking task, we're really making sure that we spend enough time understanding their motivations for change. Why is this change important to this person at this time? And if I haven't paid enough attention to that as a provider and helped my client anchor more deeply into their why change, then I may also get a lot of sustain talk. So more attention there. And then if there's sustain talk happening in the planning task, then we need to revisit the plan. It's too big, it's too broad, it needs to be smaller, more actionable, more attainable. So again, like thinking about where is that sustained talk coming from through that lens of the 4 tasks of motivational interviewing, and what can I as a provider do about that? Am I accidentally paying too much attention to it because I have a whole lot of empathy for this client, and so I'm accidentally doing a lot of reflecting and growing sustained talk, and that's not helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, and I think what I heard you say was, you know, asking ourselves, like, am I asking the right question? So, like, taking that responsibility of the conversation, because we often say, well, it's the client's resistance or it's the clients that are not getting buy-in, and then reflecting it back using those 4 like processes of motivational interviewing, and then no, like identifying where we are in those 4 processes, and then asking, why are we getting this here? Like, why are we getting this sustained talk here? What is it telling us? What is the sustained talk telling us?
Hmm. Right.
So we can better navigate it. Okay, I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So when you at the point in your career where you learned about softening sustained talk, because I think we all kind of come into motivational interviewing because of the micro skills and all those like soft skills as some people call it, and then we are met with the how to soften sustain talk and cultivate change talk. So at that point, when you started to learn about that and actually use it, how did your sessions or even life change? Like, how was that changing for you?
Oh, it's great. It brings movement. It brings motivation. It brings energy to the change process. People come to us because they're stuck and they haven't been able to figure it out on their own. And so if they come to us and we're paying a lot of attention to their stuck and sustain talk, then we're not helping them change either. It might feel empathetic and supportive, but it's not movement towards change. And as a provider, like I'm a little bit like a dog. I like to have a mission. I'm like, what's my job? Like, is it fetch? Is it like, what am I doing? And so when I learned, well, I'm using my OR skills in a particular direction, I have a mission as a motivational interviewer. I am helping them identify what they're wanting to change. I have my mission is to grow change talk and soften sustain talk. I have something to pay attention to. And I love that as a provider because it gives me a job in a session to lock onto and to go for. And it helps my clients feel like it's more helpful. I have private practice clients that have met with other therapists and they come and they're like, oh, like they feel more hope, they feel more energy, they feel more movement towards their goals. They feel like they're getting unstuck.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's more directional.
It is directional. It's absolutely directional. And that's what people come to us for, right? They're
Mhm.
coming to us for help with
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I had a similar story when I started with just learning these micro skills. I was like, "Wow, this stuff is great. I love it. I have the engagement, but now where do we go?" I kind of feel like I'm stuck as a practitioner. I don't know how to move them. And then when I started learning about this technical piece of like softening sustained talk and cultivating change talk, I'm like, "Here it is. This is what I needed." And it
Hmm.
actually helped me feel it gave me more buy-in into the motivational interviewing altogether because I'm like, okay, there is this piece as well.
Yes, we're helping professionals. We want to help. We feel good when we're being helpful. And if we're being helpful by using motivational interviewing, it's a very, very evidence based practice. We know, like at this date, 2,400 clinical trials, like that's a lot of evidence base. And so when we're implementing these skills, we feel better about our jobs too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is one of the last questions. So, what's one mantra or reminder you hold when you notice sustained talk in clients or even yourself? Do you have a mantra or a statement or something?
I have a couple. One is ambivalence is normal.
Okay.
So some compassion. Yeah, compassion. Sustained talk exists for a reason. So normalizing and having compassion for that. And the other mantra would be just remembering what we pay attention to grows. And so I don't want to pay too much attention to the sustain talk. I want to move over and pay more attention to the change talk, the why change. Why does this client want to change about this thing right now?
Mhm. Good. Yeah. One of my favorite ones is just be curious. Just come
Be
in with
curious.
curiosity. I think it was Skinner. I always butcher this quote. I don't know why I don't Google the actual quote and learn it, but I always butcher it. But it's something along the lines of, and this is something B.F. Skinner said. He said, when you find something that you like or something that intrigues you, drop everything you're doing and study it. And I think that
Mm,
that should be our approach in the conversations that we have with others as
mm,
well.
right. Hone in on it.
Mhm.
Hmm. Get
Okay.
really curious. What we pay attention to grows. So if I had a mentor that said camp out there, like put up your tent and camp out there, right? That's going to grow that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that be curious. I think if we really boiled motivational interviewing down to like two words, it would be curious. We are interviewing people for their motivations for
Yeah.
change through our
Yeah.
curiosity and attunement
Mhm.
and attention to change shock.
Yeah, and do you think because a lot of people take my courses or they take your courses, and I'm sure they're left with, oh, wow, we can do this. And then they go into the real world and they're like, oh, wait, it's not that easy. Do you think that that coaching and that supervision piece to it is so essential to just becoming better at using these skills?
It is. I mean, research, there's been many research studies on how people learn motivational interviewing, and it's not by just watching modules or reading a book. It's by learning the skills and getting coaching and practice, whether that's through learning communities of peers where you're supporting each other and practicing and getting feedback, or you're doing that from member trainers like yourself and I. But some sort of practice and feedback is essential, not only to learning the skills, because a lot of folks think I'm doing it, but have you had someone help assess what are you doing and are you doing it and get feedback on that? And then secondly, skill drift. I was just coaching someone this morning who's graduating from my certificate of advanced practice, and we've done lots of one-on-one coaching and looked at her sessions and what is she doing and what is she strong at and what is she still growing in. And she's like, what now? And so we had this conversation like, there are books. You can create learning communities. How else can you continue your skill practice? Because your skills will drift without some practice at that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because we're at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're that's just gonna naturally happen. So I agree with you and I know that the coaching sessions that I had with you were great. Even after years of me doing these courses and everything, having a coaching session where we can take, literally listen to my conversations,
Yes.
and analyze them and say, well, maybe we could have said this differently, or maybe you could have asked a question here, or left a reflection instead of followed up with a question. That was extremely helpful. So I do want to thank you for that as
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, to get into the weeds. Yeah, and
well.
even as MI experts, we need that support because we wanna keep our skills sharp and pay attention to what we're paying attention to.
Yes. So thank you so much, Hillary. This was great as always. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you? I'll also put the links here, but what is the best way where they can find you and just learn more about the great stuff you're doing out there?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm on all the socials, but my website is micenterforchange.com. And we host a free monthly webinar with free continuing education every month on special topics related to motivational interviewing. And so we've got a lot of free resources, learning resources, and courses similar to you. And thanks. Yeah, would love to have folks reach out. We're here to support you.
Awesome. And thank you so much for being part of this. I will see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on today's episode of MI for Change. If you're ready to keep growing your motivational interviewing skills, I'd love to invite you to explore my MI Academy, where you'll find a full library of on-demand courses designed to help you put MI into practice with confidence. You can learn more at www.drmonicagilbert.com. Until next time, keep asking the questions that spark change.